In the year 2367, after centuries of reaching out to the stars, humanity finally became a part of something bigger than itself: the Galactic Concord, a powerful alliance of peaceful, advanced alien civilizations spread across the galaxy. Earth had worked hard to earn a seat at the table, and when the invitation arrived, the world celebrated. The United Earth Council chose Commander Juno Reyes, a calm yet sharp leader with both military and diplomatic experience, to lead their first official delegation to Arcadia Prime, the shining capital of the Concord. The humans arrived with smiles, symbols of peace, and a sincere hope to share knowledge and cooperation. At first, the reception was polite, even curious. Aliens from all corners of the galaxy watched the newcomers with interest, whispering about Earth's rapid rise and resilience. But things changed when the Supreme Council requested full access to Earth's historical records. What was meant to be a formality turned into something else entirely. As the council members studied Earth's past, its long list of battles, endless conflicts, civil wars, revolutions, world wars, nuclear threats, and military campaigns across every continent, they were stunned. The room, once buzzing with curiosity, fell into silence. Some looked away in discomfort, others whispered in their native tongues. The Eldari, a wise and ancient race known for avoiding conflict for over 10,000 years, stood up and said in a solemn voice, "This is not history. This is horror." Commander Reyes tried to explain that humanity had changed, that Earth's wars were lessons that shaped their present and drove their wish for peace. She spoke calmly, giving context: how survival, struggle, and learning through hardship had made humans adaptable and stronger, not dangerous. But the words didn't seem enough. A council member from the Sorari species, tall and silver-skinned, said sharply, "You are too volatile. We evolved beyond violence. You embraced it." And with that, a vote was passed. Humanity was granted observer status, allowed to join the Concord in diplomacy and trade, but barred from any military participation. Earth would be watched closely, and any sign of aggression would be reported to the Council. It was a quiet rejection wrapped in official words. Back in her quarters aboard the human embassy ship, Commander Reyes stood before the stars, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. Behind her, screens still displayed the images that had shocked the Council: black and white war footage, burnt cities, marching soldiers, explosions frozen in time. Reyes didn't flinch. She had expected resistance, but not fear. She knew humanity's past wasn't clean, but it wasn't without reason. In her heart, she wondered if the Council had truly seen the full picture, or only the scars. The Concord feared what they didn't understand. And what they didn't understand was this: humans didn't survive in spite of conflict. They survived because they learned how to adapt through it. They evolved not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, and strategically. As she stared into the dark stretch of stars, a quiet thought passed through her mind. This wasn't the end. No, this was only the beginning. The Council didn't realize it yet, but a time would come when the very history they feared would be the reason humanity stood between order and chaos. That time was coming sooner than anyone expected. Months passed after humanity's uneasy arrival into the Galactic Concord. Despite the tension that lingered, the galaxy seemed to settle back into its usual rhythm. The humans remained on the outskirts, their every move watched closely by the Council. Commander Juno Reyes had heard little, save for occasional diplomatic meetings and trade talks, but she felt the unease in the air. Still, things were quiet, until the sudden reappearance of an old enemy from the depths of space. The Durelian swarm, a race of insectoid warriors, had been believed extinct after the disastrous war they waged against the Concord centuries ago. The swarm had vanished into the unknown void. Their once mighty empire crumbled to dust. But now, from the blackest corners of space, they returned. No one had seen it coming. Their numbers were vast, their ships unlike anything the Conquered had seen before. The Durelian were no longer just a mindless horde. They had evolved. New leaders, new tactics, strangely intelligent, dangerously adaptive. In a matter of weeks, the swarm overwhelmed several outer colonies, and Conquered forces, untested in war for so long, were caught completely off guard. The peaceful alliance that had spent centuries avoiding conflict found itself ill-prepared for the violence the Durelian brought. Starships fell from the skies, entire colonies were overrun, and the Conquered's most seasoned officers, trained for peace and diplomacy, struggled to adapt. The swarm seemed to anticipate every move, counter, every tactic. The council called emergency meetings, but no plans seemed to work. Strategies were drawn, then tossed aside. With each passing day, the swarm's reach spread further, and the Conquered forces began to crumble under the pressure. The losses were mounting, and morale was sinking fast. It was clear, this was a war unlike any they had fought before. The Takri, Conquered's leaders, once so proud of their peaceful ways, now realized that the galaxy's oldest and most dangerous threat had returned, and they were powerless to stop it. As the situation grew worse, the Supreme Council made a choice they had never imagined. They reached out to the one group they had feared, Earth, the humans, the same species they had judged as too volatile, too unpredictable, and unworthy of military trust. Yet now, with the Durelian pressing closer, the Concord had no choice. Desperation made strange allies. The Council's message to Earth was simple, cold, and filled with unspoken fear. Help us. The humans, who had been locked out of the Conquered's military efforts, were now asked to assist in the war against the very enemy that had once almost destroyed the Alliance. Juno Reyes, hearing the request, was struck with a strange mix of emotions. There had been no respect for Earth's past, only disdain. But now, humanity was being called upon to save the very races that had rejected them. Reyes understood the significance. It was not just a request for help, it was a desperate surrender, a realization that the Concord could not win this war alone. They needed humanity's unique talents, the adaptability forged in 1,000 wars, to stand any chance against the swarm. As the human delegation received the order, Reyes felt the weight of it all. This was more than just a chance to prove humanity's worth. It was an opportunity to show the Concord that Earth's past was not a burden, it was a weapon. And if the Council wanted to survive, they would have to accept the harsh truth. Humanity had learned to fight in ways the galaxy could not yet understand. Reyes, standing before her team, knew that this would be their greatest test. The swarm was coming, and the clock was ticking. The only question now was whether the Concord could set aside their fear and trust the humans to lead them to victory, or whether the galaxy would fall to an ancient enemy, their greatest mistake sealed forever. Commander Juno Reyes stood at the entrance to the High Command, the place where the Concord's greatest minds gathered to make decisions that could shape the fate of entire species. The tension was palpable. She had been summoned for a special session, one that would determine the future of humanity's involvement in the war against the Durelian swarm. As she entered the large, dimly lit room, alien generals and strategists sat at a massive circular table, their eyes fixed on her. Reyes knew the situation was dire. The Conquered had underestimated the swarm, and now, with the galaxy's peace at risk, they had no choice but to rely on humanity's unique military expertise. No one in the room had ever imagined that they would need Earth's war knowledge, but here they were. As the door slid shut, the silence grew thick, broken only by the sound of Reyes's steady steps. She had prepared for this moment. "You've called us here for our experience," she said, her voice calm but carrying the weight of the urgency in the air. "Let me show you why humanity survived and why you need us to win this war." Reyes stepped forward, activating a screen that flickered to life with ancient Earth footage that no Concord strategist had ever considered. The images were jarring, unsettling. The faces of soldiers in muddy trenches, their eyes hollow with exhaustion. The devastation of scorched earth tactics as cities burned to the ground. The wreckage of fallen fighter planes in the skies during chaotic dogfights. Images of desperate civilian resistance networks, fighting with whatever they could get there. Hands-on, from broken rifles to improvised bombs. The alien commanders recoiled, visibly disturbed by the scenes of brutal human warfare. One Zentari general, known for his cold, calculating nature, whispered under his breath, "They learned from every war and survived them all." Reyes didn't flinch. She continued, detailing the history of humanity's adaptability, how Earth had faced its darkest moments, and yet each time humanity had found a way to adapt, evolve, and survive. The alien races, who had long abandoned war for diplomacy and peace, couldn't comprehend the unyielding resilience that humanity had built into its very nature. Guerrilla tactics, the art of fighting with limited resources, asymmetric warfare, humans had mastered all of it. Psychological operations, turning the enemy's fear against them, manipulating their perceptions. The ability to turn every disadvantage into an opportunity. "We don't fight harder," Reyes said, her voice steady. "We fight smarter." The room fell silent as the footage ended, leaving behind only the echo of the words. The alien leaders exchanged glances, their expressions a mixture of disbelief and reluctant admiration. They had never considered that humanity's history of war might be a resource, a treasure trove of knowledge waiting to be tapped into. But now, they had no choice. The swarm's tactics were unlike anything they had faced, and the Concord had to learn quickly, or they would lose everything. Finally, the Supreme Chancellor spoke, his voice heavy with uncertainty. "You are right, Commander Reyes," he said. "Your people have evolved in ways we did not foresee. We have no choice but to accept your methods." After a long pause, the council voted. The decision was clear, though hesitant. A joint task force would be formed, and humanity would be given an active role. Humans would not just be advisors, they would lead, teach, and guide the Concord's forces in battle. The council, once so sure of their own superiority, now found themselves placing their trust in the hands of the humans. Reyes nodded, satisfied with the outcome, but she knew the real work was just beginning. She selected a small, elite group of human soldiers, known only by a name whispered in the darkest corners of Earth's military circles, the Black Archive. This group, trained in the most secretive and dangerous tactics, was humanity's hidden weapon, a collection of soldiers who had studied the worst of Earth's wars and survived them. They had learned the lessons of war's brutality, and now they were ready to apply those lessons to the galaxy's greatest threat. As Reyes turned to leave the High Command, she knew that the real battle wasn't just against the Durrellian, it was against the Concord's own fears, their reluctance to accept that humanity's brutal history might be the key to their survival. The Black Archive would show them that sometimes, to fight a monster, you had to think like one. The human-led task force hit the front lines with a force that the Durrellian were not prepared for. While the conquered forces had retreated at the first signs of the swarm's overwhelming tactics, the humans dug in. They didn't fall back. They adapted. Where the Concord relied on their pristine command chains, carefully planned strategies, and advanced technology, humans saw things differently. The Earth soldiers didn't wait for orders. They created chaos, broke the rules, and turned the battlefield into something unpredictable. They jammed the Durrellians' communications, cutting off their hive minds' coordination. They used their own weaknesses against them, drawing the swarm into carefully laid traps, where their numbers worked against them. Humans were masters at using the terrain, mountains, forests, urban environments. Everything became a weapon in their hands. They didn't need to fight fair. They didn't even need to win every battle. They just needed to make the swarm question every step they took. But it didn't stop there. Humanity understood the power of the mind as much as the power of the weapon. In rare moments of intense, desperate conflict, Commander Reyes's team negotiated with the splintered factions of the Durelian swarm, using their own fractured leadership to create temporary ceasefires and sows of confusion within the swarm ranks. The Concord's higher-ups watched, first with disbelief, then with awe. The victories started to mount. With each battle, the tide of war began to shift. The humans' unconventional tactics forced the Durelian to fight on terms they hadn't anticipated. Slowly, the swarm's momentum began to stall, and the Concord started to notice. More and more alien commanders began to adopt the tactics the humans had introduced. Where once they would have relied solely on their advanced technology and sheer firepower, they now saw the value in unpredictability. The battlefront became a chaotic but effective mix of strategies, human ingenuity combined with conquered firepower. But it was more than that. The alien officers, who had long looked down on humanity's past, now found themselves studying Earth's history with a mix of awe and fear. It was one thing to witness a few victories. It was another to understand the deep well of experience that humanity drew from. Earth had survived countless wars, each time evolving, learning, and adapting to new threats. It wasn't just that. The humans had won. They had learned to adapt their very way of thinking, transforming survival into an art. Even the most skeptical of the Concord's leaders had to admit that the humans were unlike any species they had ever encountered. The truth was undeniable. Humanity had been forged by conflict, and now, that same conflict had made them formidable. But Commander Reyes, as always, kept her focus. Her team had won, but the war was far from over. They had pushed the Durelian back, but they had not yet defeated them. "Remember," Reyes said to her team, "we fight because we must, not because we want to." The words hung in the air, a reminder that while humanity had learned to thrive in chaos, their motivation was survival, not conquest. Reyes knew all too well that war had a cost, and even in victory, it could never be celebrated. The task? Force had turned the tide, yes, but the real battle was still to come. The Durelian were a far-reaching threat, and the war was far from finished. The humans might have saved the conquered once, but as the skies above darkened with the approaching swarm, they all knew. The real test was still ahead. With the Durelian, swarm retreating and the galaxy slowly recovering from the brink of destruction, the Conquered held a final war council, an event that felt almost like a formality, yet it was anything but. Commander Reyes and her team of human soldiers were summoned to the gathering, their role in the victory undeniable, but the atmosphere was far from celebratory. Despite the victories, a sense of caution lingered in the air. The Conquered had grudgingly accepted humanity's involvement, but now, with the war nearing its end, they had to decide what role Earth would play in the future. The Council voted to allow humans permanent positions within the Concord Defense Corps, though the decision was hesitant, almost as if they were accepting a necessary evil. There were murmurs of doubt in every corner, whispers of fear and uncertainty about whether humans could truly be trusted. The Council members, so proud of their peaceful past, struggled to fully embrace a species so shaped by war. Yet, no one could deny the human contribution. No one could deny that the Durelian had been pushed back, and it had been the humans who turned the tide. That night, as the formal meeting ended, the Supreme Chancellor of the Concord requested a private audience with Commander Reyes. The weight of the conversation was clear in her eyes. "Your people are both our greatest hope, and our deepest." "Warning," the Chancellor said quietly, her voice tinged with both admiration and something darker. An awareness that humanity, for all its wisdom, was a reminder of the dangers inherent in conflict. Reyes, always composed, allowed a faint smile to play on her lips. "Then learn from our scars," she replied. "That's what we did." It wasn't a challenge. It was the truth. Humanity had survived war not because they had been victorious. in every battle, but because they had learned from every defeat, every tragedy, and every struggle. The scars were not just marks of suffering, they were proof of survival. The conversation ended, and as Reyes left the chamber, she felt a strange sense of finality. The war was over, but the story of humanity's place in the galaxy was just beginning. When Earth's flag was raised beside the flags of the other worlds of the Concord, it was no longer a symbol of a new, untested species. It was a symbol of survival. Humanity had not just won battles, they had turned the lessons of war into something greater. Alien academies began to teach Earth's history, not as a tale of horror, but as a legend. The great struggles of humanity were no longer viewed as a mark of shame, but as a testament to resilience. The rise and fall of civilizations, the wars, fought and lost, the moments of desperation that sparked the will to survive, all of it became a part of galactic education. Earth's story, once a cautionary tale, was now the story of the species that had turned the crucible of conflict into wisdom. Humanity was no longer the outlier, the species too dangerous to trust. They were the survivors, the strategists, the ones who had learned to adapt and to grow stronger from every battle. As the stars outside the council windows twinkled, Juno Reyes looked up. For the first time, she didn't see just a new chapter for humanity. She saw the beginning of a legacy, one that would not be defined by war, but by the wisdom it had forged in its wake.